Crash at Crush. Have you guys heard about the crash at Crush? It was quite a crash of two locomotives head-on. Actually, it was quite a disaster, a catastrophe. Happened in 1896. We're right now in Bremont, Texas. We're not at the site. We're going to go to the site. We're about, well, Waco, Texas is still going to head to the northwest to get to Waco, where this happened, just north of Waco. And to give you some orientation, Austin to the southwest. So we diverted a little bit because here at Bremont Cemetery, we've got one of the victims of this disaster. Yeah, you go to the late 1890s, there was a railroad. It was the Kansas, Missouri, Texas line. They call it the Katy. And they were building a line from Dallas all the way south to Houston. And it was 1896, right, when they came through that area of Waco, north of Waco, and they actually called it Crush after one of the, I would say, showmen and sponsors of all of this from the Katy Railroad, an employee named William George Crush. So they made a town. It's not really a town, the location. They called it Crush. They said, we're going to take two of our obsolete locomotives. And this was happening a lot in the late 1800s. I think even into the early 1900s, the railroads would stage these dramatic head-on collisions at high speed. Of course, no one on the train, for spectacles. Well, this spectacle, as I mentioned, turned into a huge disaster. 2 people killed, many injured. And when you hear the story, you're just going to roll your eyes. I mean, how close they let them. I'm standing... The cemetery here is next to the high school, and you can see exactly 100 yards, and they let the photographers be 100 yards away from this, and these boilers exploded, which they weren't. Anyway, it was like World War II. I'm surprised many more people weren't killed. So we're going to go up there and talk about it, but in the meantime, I thought we would, on the way here, before going up, I was coming up from Austin, that we would pay respects to Mr. Darnall, is his name. And his grave happens to be right up here. Beautiful old historic cemetery. Speaking of trains, we always get our train coming through here. Boy, how ironic, right? So yeah, look at this. A really nice monument for him. Now there's a John Darnall who passed in 1902. This might have been his brother. Well, let's take a look at Ernest. All right, I got a flashlight, so let's get that going. Boy, it sounds like that train is going to run us over here. All right, Ernest L. Only son of John W. and Novi Darnall. So he was born November 1st, 1872. And it says, was wounded while witnessing the collision at Crush, and died in Waco. So again, Waco is just south. September 16th, 1896. So yeah. He got hit by something, who knows what, but when those two things collided, there was silence, and the crowd was silent, and of course, the trains didn't go up like they usually do. They telescoped, and it was just, an explosion. They each had, I think, 6 boxcars behind them filled with railroad ties, so it was spectacular. But then there was a delay, and then the boilers, which they were supposed to be explosion proof, at that speed. I think they were going faster. They hit faster speeds. Well, there was a delay and then an explosion. And it was bad. So we're going to go up to, between Waco and the town of West is a marker. I don't think that's the exact location, though. I want to find the exact location. So anyway, we'll go up there and see what we find. In the meantime, we have paid respects to Mr. Darnall. Rest in peace. That's Santa Claus. And that appears to be a Christmas theme park farm, and may be appropriate because I think this is the location where it happened, or close. And I say that because Ringling Brothers had a circus tent here, if this is the spot, when they were staging the show. I think that's pretty interesting. So here you see the railroad track crossing. Now, Waco, I just came through from the south, and right up the highway there, 35, is the town of West, right up there, very close actually. And this, if you want to come see, is the Lights of the West. Probably a cool Christmas show here. But yeah. So the marker, I'm not sure exactly where the marker is, but it's very close to here. But the reason I think this is the spot is if you look, oh, there's a train coming, I think. Look at that. So what I want you to do is we're going to zoom in and look way down there. And you may not be able to tell because the train is coming. But the train is coming down a grade that is, it's coming down. It's a higher grade. And if we look to this side, you look way down there, I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to watch my back here. See how it's coming down? Well, that train's coming at a decent speed, it looks like. So we're going to have to be a little careful and step back. But the deal is they actually laid another track. This was the main track and now is the main track, but they laid another track next to it for that whole run. 4 miles, I think. Parallel, so they wouldn't have runaway trains coming, you know, loose on the main line. Oh, here we go. Oh, it is loud. So, the event happened. Everything was set up. One of the interesting things is the people were trying to get like this close. And they had up to 25,000 people come. And it was this promotion where I think 25 or 30 trains to get people here for this event, weeks ahead of time, planned. William Crush said, oh no, you got to stay back 200 yards, but we'll let the photographers come within 100 yards. Now, 100 yards, let me just, it's like insane. What is something I can reference 100 yards? Okay, Do you see that barn there with the tractor? And you have to be standing here. That's pretty close. That is maybe 120 yards. So the photographers are that close. And the crowd, and it took like, the whole event got delayed because the people were just, they wouldn't stand back. Now they had one train positioned way up there, the engine going, but not, was standing still, and they had an engineer on the train up there. And all of a sudden, William Crush, who was, I think, sitting on a white horse, dropped his hat, and both trains went. The throttles were set, and the engineers of each train stayed on for 4 turns of the main wheels, which would be like probably 50 feet or something. Then they jumped off, and then the trains were loose. They were going. And the people held their breath. And the trains came, they converged. There was an article in the Dallas Morning News described what happened, and I'm going to read it. It said the rumble of the 2 trains, faint and far at first, distinct each fleeting second, was like the gathering force of a cyclone. Nearer and nearer they came, the whistles of each blowing repeatedly. Torpedoes, which had been placed on the track, and by the way, torpedoes are like firecrackers that when the wheels of the train run over them, they're strapped on the rail, they explode like a firecracker. And the torpedoes were going off for effect. Each train reached a speed of about 45 miles per hour, and by the time they met near the anticipated spot, people thought they were moving much faster, and then they hit. There was a large explosion and the crash. A number of timbers torn and a shower of splinters. There was just a swift instance of silence, as if it was controlled by a single impulse. Both boilers then exploded simultaneously. The air was filled with flying missiles of iron and steel, varying in size from a postage stamp to half of a driving wheel. Debris was thrown hundreds of feet in the air. Some of the debris came down among the spectators, killing 2, I mentioned. Actually, it was later reported that another died, 3. And Mr. Darnall died the next day down in Waco here, 23 years old. There was a photographer, Jarvis Joe Dean of Waco. He lost an eye to a flying bolt. Everything was reduced to scraps of wood and steel, except one car in the rear of each train, which had been left untouched. The engines had both been completely telescoped. They were just flattened out. There was nothing left except pieces of wood, which were eagerly seized upon and carried home as souvenirs. Well, it was reported in the news around the world, and it made headlines around the world, and just as fast, Crush was fired. But like the next day, they rehired him because the publicity wasn't bad. They were like, this is spectacular. This is good. So what happened was the 3 dead and the injured, the railroad, the Katy, they paid them off good. $10,000 each. which in those days was a ton of money. A ton of money. Even Joplin wrote a song about it. So it was a famous event. Yep, and it happened right here. I think we are very close to the actual location. This makes sense. All right, gang. Crazy story from the scene. North of Waco, south of West, in Texas. A crash. All right, see you later. Stay safe.